Good evening, everyone. In this class, we'll be looking at Indian philosophy. A major theme. Every year, you're getting questions from Buddhism, Jainism, and the associated logic of philosophy. It is manifesting in one way or the other, either in literary works of Buddhism and Jainism, philosophy, other Indian philosophical schools, and the overall concept of religion. Today in this lecture, we will try to achieve only one thing. How can we logically decipher an answer from a limited set of knowledge? Single point agenda is to understand why philosophy can shape our thoughts and how did philosophy shape our thoughts? Why and how? Okay. The word philosophy literally means love of knowledge. So, there are a lot of things that you can pick up from your understanding, but for prelims exam, we have a single point agenda with respect to Indian philosophy. What is Indian philosophy trying to achieve? It is addressing one core problem: how to handle suffering, human suffering. So, it is safe to say that philosophy is nothing but a systematic approach to address this core problem of reducing human suffering. There are multiple schools which advocated multiple paths to answer the same question. How can we reduce human suffering? Single point agenda. Okay? This is the problem that Indian philosophy is trying to solve. Clear? Now, let's take a step back and see the various branches of the study of philosophy. I'll briefly introduce the terms so that the next time you read any text, if you come across these words, it is not confusing. Clear? Philosophy majorly has, for our sake, like there are many other schools also, like other domains also, but we will broadly take three domains which are useful to us. Let me introduce the words metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. Okay, philosophy, for our prelims understanding or general studies understanding, we will be looking at three broad areas of philosophy. Philosophy, like I told you, is about love of knowledge. There are many things in the domain of philosophy. In the context of Indian philosophy, we are only picking up that element which will address this core problem of human suffering. How to reduce human suffering. Okay? Ultimately, when we talk about the end goal, it's liberation. Liberation from this suffering. Nirvana, Kaivalya, Moksha. There are multiple names for the same thing, which is the end of that suffering. Metaphysics is an approach in philosophy which tries to understand. There are illusions and there is reality. Something that is eternally true. What is that thing which is eternally true? If you pursue that, you will not be deviated. All the suffering is actually because you are chasing something unreal. When you are chasing something unreal, obviously you can't get a hold on it. Right? Let's say you are chasing a mirage in a desert. Can you ever catch a mirage? No, it's an illusion. And that will frustrate you. And you will be miserable because of that. So, what is that mirage? What is that reality? A theory that tries to explain beyond the world of physics. Physics means logic. There is an action, there is a reaction. Causality is there, right? That world is the world of physics. Over and above that, if you are trying to see what is true, that is metaphysics. How to know that metaphysical reality is epistemology. So, this is about object of truth. This is about method of truth. Okay? When you are having this object and method, you need to ensure that you are not disturbing someone else while they are pursuing that. That is ethics. If you have a code of conduct, how should you live your life? What is the answer for that? It's nothing but the code of conduct. The eightfold path of Buddha, for example, Ashtanga Marga, what is it? It's nothing but a code of conduct. How should you live your life? Why should you do that? Because you will end suffering. Okay? Like this, Indian philosophy is trying to address the problem of suffering by either taking a metaphysical route or explaining the process of attaining that truth, or just prescribing. I don't know about what exists beyond this world. So let's focus on the way of our life as long as we are here. So let's focus on living a ethical life. Okay? This is the broad scope that you can think of Indian philosophy as far as the prelims exam is concerned. All right. So I would say that Indian philosophy, you should not look at it like a systematic belief where you are given a list, you by heart it. It's like an algorithm. If you understand that algorithm, you will be able to logically map the questions. You will see that by the end of this lecture only, you will be able to solve a lot of questions. So let's see and approach those questions after this lecture. I would say it is an algorithm to solve the problem of suffering. Now, what is the universal problem statement? How to address this problem of suffering? You broadly have these three types of suffering which we spoke about. Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, Adhyatmika. So, a pain that is caused by nature, floods, earthquakes, storms, is Adi Daivika. Adi Bhautika is something that is caused by your enemies or human beings, fellow human beings. This is where ethics become important. Okay, so when you're talking about this Adi Bhautika, ethics become important. The next thing is Adhyatmika. Adhyatmika means something that is caused by your own thoughts, internal churning, right? The self-caused pain or the anxiety, confusion, despair that you usually complain about, mental health issues, even that is suffering, right? This is physical suffering. This is mental suffering. All of them can be addressed through this universal problem statement. Now, how do we know the truth? This is about the metaphysical aspect of philosophy. So, let's say, read this. Before arguing what is true, philosophers debate how we know that. See, if you want to attain true knowledge, like if you have to reach a destination, you will need a mode of transport to that destination. And you should trust that so-called vehicle that will take you to that destination is efficient enough to help you reach that destination. Right? So, philosophers debated whether the vehicle that they are using is good enough or not. Okay? That created the first logical parameter to divide the schools of philosophy, and there you have something called pramanas. This is important. See, previously you did not have all this in your syllabus, but with the new NCERT included, try to, remember these keywords. Pramanas means the tools through which you will view a certain perspective, certain reality. For example, you see this pen. If you see this pen, I'm trusting my sense. Okay, there is no other mediation in this. And because I'm able to use my sensory knowledge, I will accept this as reality. That first method is called pratyaksha, your perception. Then you have inference, logical inference. For example, you are seeing a smoke. So logically, as an extension, I think there might be fire. That is the second way in which you can obtain knowledge. The third part is when you can trust the lessons that you get from some testimony. Someone told you. Whether you trust it or not is up to you. If you trust it, it becomes a source of knowledge. If you don't trust it, it will not become a source of knowledge. Right? That is the third metric. So these three broad metrics defined the various schools of philosophy. And out of all those schools, this Shabda, that is the testimony, is the most important one because that created the first division of our philosophical schools. Broadly speaking, if you consider that testimony, that is something that somebody else told you as a source of knowledge, as true, then you are called Astika school. If you don't believe, Nastika school. Okay? So, the common misconception when you hear the word Nastika is that we are talking about God. Actually, in traditional philosophical sense, it has got nothing to do with God. It is only about whether you accept Vedas as an acceptable form of knowledge or not. So, Astika schools, Nastika schools. Under this, you have Charvaka, Buddhism, Jainism. They are also called Sramana traditions. Any idea why? I'll get back to this Sramana traditions later. But Astika means you believe that Vedas are an accepted source of knowledge. Quick question. Does God have anything to do with orthodox and heterodox? Okay. Astika also means orthodox in English, heterodox. Okay. So, in this heterodox schools, larger philosophy is that you are the master of your own fate. You have to come out of your own suffering through your effort. You have to discover the path. In this orthodox schools, largely it is like the knowledge is already out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just go and pursue it. Okay? Both the paths are equally confusing, but here at least you are getting an option. Let's say the other day when we were speaking about why Buddhism and Jainism gained traction in the masses, this pursuit is only limited to a few sections of the society when they became rigid. But in this case, if you put the effort, even common people had access to that end of suffering. Do you think any human being wants to suffer? No, right? Everybody will equally want a path to end that suffering, a solution to that suffering problem. So these schools gave that option, that access to end that suffering. And that is the first set of division in the Indian philosophical tradition. Clear? So these are the pramanas. And so that created the great divide between two set of schools, orthodox and heterodox. These are the orthodox schools: Nyaya, Vaiseshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta. So you always see them in pairs. Okay? I'll tell you why we see them in pairs. Each school is trying to address one core problem. What is that core problem? Let us see. Clear? Now, let's begin with the slightly easier schools, that is Nastika schools. So, we begin with Charvaka. Okay. As you can see here, you can look at this image. There is a Greek equivalent or a Western equivalent of this called hedonism. Simply put, if I have to sum up in a very informal way, kao pio ash karo. Enjoy. There is no afterlife. Live as if there is no tomorrow. This is the crude form of hedonism. Slightly on the right end of the spectrum, if I create a sort of a spectrum, which is the spectrum of how human beings should behave, this school says enjoy, just seek pleasure. On this end of the spectrum is no scope for ethics. Pleasure maximization is the only objective. In this side, there is ethics. You don't try to kill your fellow human being for your own pleasure. You still have something that is right and wrong. Most of the materialistic schools, Charvaka is also called Lokayata. Okay, Lokayata school or materialism. Indian philosophy is on this side of the spectrum. Nowhere we are advocating this side of the spectrum, because every society will not try to maximize suffering. No philosophy will try to maximize suffering. That is definitely creating a society where you can't trust anyone. So you're on this side of the spectrum. So that is the first school, that is Lokayata or Charvaka school. Why do you think they just say that I don't think there is anything beyond this life? Because they are purely using the pramana of perception alone. Like, if I see this pen, it exists. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. Can you see God? No. Can you know what is there after your death? Afterlife, is there a concept? No. Therefore, I will reject everything. You tell me the story of Vedas, I don't know if it is true or not. That is what they will say. So I will reject everything and just accept we only have pleasure to seek. That is the first thing. Next up, Buddhism and Jainism. So to explain this Buddhism and Jainism, let me take the premises, two different premises of human life. We will show you the story of Buddha, and then we will show you the story of Mahavir. You know that famous story, right? Buddha, where he walked out of the castle and he saw sufferings of different kinds, like death, old age, disease, demise, everything. Like all the sufferings, he was moved by that suffering. So the core question of human life that he picked up was, why are we suffering? So his entire life's pursuit was in search of an answer for this. Okay. Then you have Mahavir. So he was born in a Mahajanpada, also similar circumstances. So he set out on his journey to understand the complexity of life. See, you see that, let's say for example, you come out on a road. Imagine you were told by your friend or someone to wait for some time because the traffic police is there, and you did not listen, you started. You were caught by the traffic police. You didn't have your license, your helmet, nothing. The bike is also not yours. That's a different thing. That is your friend's bike. So you're not really bothered. But what if it is your bike? You will be like, oh, I should have listened. How do you know you should have listened? You don't. You can only connect the dots backwards. So, world is very complex in the sense that if this happens, this would happen. If this did not happen, the scenario would be something else. The outcome would be something else. This kind of thinking will only make us move in loops, and that is the kind of a question that Mahavir wanted to understand. Why is the world so complex? Two different problem statements of the same aspect of life, right? So these are the practical problems thinkers of that time picked up and eventually came up with an answer. In this case, Buddha came up with the conclusion that why do we suffer? Because we have desire. You end this, suffering will end. So finally, he came up with the conclusion that there is suffering, there is a cause of the suffering, there is a cessation to the suffering, and here is a path that can help you end that suffering. The fourfold truth, or you can also call them Arya Satya. Clear? The fourfold truth. So, do you think Buddha talked about metaphysics? Did Buddha tell, oh, this is how life will be after your death? Did he tell about soul as a concept? How can soul move from one body to another? Did he talk about rebirth? So, all he spoke about was, there is suffering, I can stop that. Nothing else. He was intentionally and deliberately silent on these metaphysical aspects. These metaphysical discussions were there even before Buddha. All the religions were talking about, the philosophical traditions were talking about the same aspect of metaphysics. What is there after life, after your death? Buddha didn't want to talk about it because the minute those discussions start, common people will not understand that he was talking about a practical day-to-day life. Okay. So his entire focus was on this code of conduct. We spoke about three things: metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. So he was just focusing on ethics. Clear? So this is the basic distinction between Buddhism and Jainism. Let me explain the concepts that came out of the basic premise of Buddhism. Let me ask you this question. If there is suffering and you can stop it, can you say that suffering is momentary? Like in that moment, if I stop the desire, suffering will also end. Can you say that it is permanent? Neither suffering is permanent nor desire is permanent. Nothing is permanent. Everything is momentary. This was the first logical inference of Buddhism, and that inference is taught to humanity. Why are we, striving for a lot of things? Everything is momentary. That theory is called Kshanikavad. Nothing is permanent. Neither your success nor your failure. So, the Kshanabhanganavada or the Kshanikavada as it is called is trying to explain that everything is momentary. This is the inference. Okay. Buddha did not tell this theory. Now, as a person who believed that everything is impermanent, do you think Buddha will talk about a permanent soul? No, right? Even soul is temporary. So, if you are talking about rebirth, he will talk about soul. But even that rebirth can be stopped if you stop your suffering. So, even soul is not permanent. So, this is an often confused point when you're solving prelims questions. Buddhism, does it have a permanent soul or not? Answer? No. So, they will not explain rebirth as a philosophical concept. Punarjanma, as it is called. Hindu philosophy or Sanatan Dharma, most of the Vedic schools talk about the karma philosophy and attach that karma to a permanent soul. Okay? So, what is liberated? When you talk about liberation, ultimately, what takes liberation? What takes rebirth? According to the Vedic school of thought, it is the soul. So, after liberation, these souls transmigrate to a heaven abode. Their transmigration to that heaven is the end of suffering. All the religions are talking about the same thing, end of suffering, but their idea is different. When you talk about Buddhism, soul is arising because there is desire. If you practice enough, a code of conduct, if you practice enough, you will extinguish this desire, and as a logical conclusion, the soul will also get extinguished. So, Annata or no permanent soul is one concept in Buddhism. You might get a lot of questions on this concept. Is there a permanent soul in Buddhism or not? No, there is no permanent soul because everything is momentary. Clear? We will stop Buddhism till now and we will move to the other question that is dealt by Mahavir. What problem was he trying to solve? Complexity of life. Now, I'll give you a story. This is a very famous story. Elephant and the 6 blind men. I hope you know this story. There is an elephant and there are 6 blind men who are trying to perceive or touch elephant and describe it. One blind person touches the trunk and describes only trunk is elephant. The tooth, the huge enamel coated tooth, if you take that, they'll tusk, as I call it. They perceive that and say that only this is elephant. Some other person catches hold of the tail and say this is elephant. Are they wrong? None of them are wrong. Are they right? None of them are right. So, the complexity of the world can be explained when we believe in the collective capacities of the people and accept that all of us have partially true perception of what reality is. So, you need to have a certain code of conduct to have the ability to gain the partial truths of every human being out there or every living form out there. If you get that, you are attaining a state called Kaivalya. So, Jainism is a school which believes that there is an element of reality in everything around us. And they believe in soul. Soul is the ultimate reality. So, even inanimate objects like this pen will have some element of souls. Okay. So if you have multiple souls, objects will also have souls. Ultimately, a person who has something called three ratnas of Jainism: right knowledge, right faith, and right conduct, will achieve a complete knowledge. Such a person is called Jina or Jaina. And such knowledgeable person will attain a mental state called Kaivalya. Okay, to sum it up, the complexity of this world can be understood by the partial truths that every one of us holds, accepting that partial truths, and then combining all of them through a combination of this, focusing on this, and ensuring that all the impurities attached to your soul are it's called, I don't want to get into the complexity of it. You are trying to rinse yourself of all the sins so that you attain that complete knowledge. Such a person is called Jaina, and the mental state that that particular Jaina achieves is called Kaivalya. Clear? Okay. So there are many versions of the truth. See, when you are trying to understand that reality is complex, if you don't think that soul is a true entity, like in the world of Jainas, if you don't accept that soul is permanent, if I don't believe in the world of soul, what are you trying to understand? Because according to them, the complexity of the world can be understood if you understand that. Okay, let me give you a visual to help you understand that. Consider this like a hierarchy of the amount of intellect or amount of consciousness a certain object has. So inanimate objects also have some element of consciousness, and consciousness, according to Jainas, that is a amount of intellect. Even plants have some intellect. Even this inanimate objects have some amount of intellect, which is nothing but consciousness. Anything according to Jainas that has intellect or consciousness is soul. So there is a hierarchy on the top of which sits Jaina or Jina. There is a hierarchy of objects at various levels. All of them will have souls because the world is multifaceted, complex, and there are so many aspects to this reality. If you believe that the world in itself is real, you will have to logically accept that they constitute soul. That is the reason why they do not reject soul. Okay? If it is too much to digest, understand, Buddhism rejects permanent soul, everybody else accepts. Now, coming back to the Buddha school. No. They don't act. So I'm talking about the other schools where forget soul, they don't accept anything. Like they don't even believe that we have to pursue some external code of conduct. Do whatever you like, but the bare minimum is whatever path that you are taking should not disturb your fellow human being. More or less, I would say that is the lifestyle of the 21st century. Okay? They're not pursuing any truth. The only thing that they know is what they see. They're not pursuing anything, they're just living it. They don't have a goal of pursuing something. What are they pursuing then? What are they pursuing? Nothing. Is there a single thing that every school of every philosopher who subscribes to the Charvaka school, are they trying to achieve something? Is there a common goal for all of them? No, they don't. They don't have that. Don't misunderstand. Charvaka school, according to them, they are not trying to end suffering. They are saying that suffering is inevitable. So do whatever you like, you enjoy. We don't have to pursue a problem that we can't see. In the larger context, suffering means what happens after life, what happens, what is the purpose of life. Adhyatmika Bada, as it is called. That is the highest form of suffering. The lower forms, Adi Daivika and Adi Bhautika, are something that is inevitable. Like, so Charvaka says that those two kinds of suffering are anyway there. We will try to minimize Adi Bhautika suffering, which is caused by our human beings, because it's a code of conduct. You enjoy, let him enjoy. Live and let live. Okay? Bare minimum ethics. It's not a life goal. So it is a kind of world, if you want to be an artist, be an artist. If you want to be an actor, be an actor. If you want to just sit at home, good for you. Nobody has any standards or any point of reference that this is the ideal thing to do in the society. What is happiness to you, you do it. Not my business to go about telling what is right and wrong to you. This is the simplest form of Charvaka. Okay? Yes. Moving, we'll discuss later. Yeah. Now, I was talking about Buddhism schools, right? Initially, when Buddha was trying to explain the suffering as the cause, desire as the cause of every suffering, like we said, discussed, we did not talk about any metaphysical reality. We were only talking about whether we have a path to end the suffering or not. But over a period of time, it so happened that followers of Buddha themselves created interpretations out of this as a logical extension. In this larger tradition, you will have Mahayana and Hinayana. Hinayana lesser accepted, Mahayana major accepted. So this Mahayana, Hinayana will further have sub-schools which were asked in UPSC. We'll get back to that, but broadly speaking, what is Mahayana, what is Hinayana? Which one came first? Hinayana. Why? Because that is the logical extension of immediately whatever happened after Buddha. So the followers said that, okay, let's say we don't have a permanent God. I am not treating Buddha as God. He's a super teacher, super human being who achieved something very extraordinary. We respect. For that, we'll strive to be that person. We'll learn from that person. Nothing else. And I'm not here to save you. You got to do it for yourself. And if I complete what Buddha taught me, I will attain that peace of mind. And such a person, through self-effort, who is overcoming this cycle of pain and suffering and attaining that nirvana, that person is called Arhat. A being who's, all that suffering is deleted from his mind. It's just there. So whenever you see the word Arhat, it's self-effort. Okay? Now, even in this, you will see there are two different schools of thought. Take a look at this. I'm just using this visual to help you understand some things. Let's say we are going back to that pramanas. Take a look at this. If I see a chair, the chair exists exactly as I see it. Let's say you are looking at this chair. It exists. It's your pramana, the direct perception. So through direct perception, we immediately grasp the real dharmas, that is the world around us, that compose the external world. So that is one school of thought within the Hinayana. Buddha, mind you, did not tell you about epistemology or metaphysics, but eventually the followers tried to create that metaphysics and epistemology because they were trying to match the standards of the Brahmanical traditions back then, which eventually spoke about all this. Now, indirect realism. If I see a chair, I'm actually perceiving a mental image of the chair which is caused by an external data. Take a look at this. Imagine there is a cameraman who is capturing this chair and you are looking at the video footage created by the cameraman. Clear? Indirect realism. So the Hinayana schools got further divided on these two logical points. Why is it philosophically significant? See, when you are saying that the world is momentary, if you are looking at that chair, is it true or false? It is true. But you are also saying that everything is momentary. Is the same chair again relevant in the next second if it is not permanent? You also have this UPSC essay. You can't step into the same river twice. Heraclitus. So we will see some parallels in Western philosophy and Indian philosophy. Right? Okay, I'll not go into that level of depth. Just understand that Hinayana school was speaking about a difference in the way you perceive the world and how you interpret this idea of Kshanikavad. Based on that difference of tool of knowledge, either direct or indirect, two different schools came. You just have to know that. What are the schools, etc. While we are doing the previous year questions, we will see. Mahayana school. Here, the difference is that whatever Buddha was against, I would not say against, whatever Buddha did not encourage, treating himself on the pedestal of a god, moving away from the idea of self-effort, believing that you are not good enough, you will need someone to save you. Exactly what Buddha was against, that became a part of the larger Buddhist tradition in our history. Mahayana Buddhism is the largely followed version of Buddhism in our country in 1st century and later. In the earlier days, when Ashoka was there, it was the Hinayana Buddhism. After 1st century, it is the Mahayana version. Okay? So after Mahayana, as we move towards 3rd, 4th centuries, as Buddhism migrated to other parts of the world, eastern part, you also have Tantric Buddhism. Okay? And that form of Buddhism is relevant in Kashmir, Ladakh region. Okay? Anyway, we'll come back to that. As far as Mahayana is concerned, it's called a larger vehicle or the greater vehicle because it had the ability to appeal to the masses. Central to this idea is Buddha taking an anthropomorphic form. Anthropomorphic means human form and is symbolized as God. The human form of Buddha is now made an object of worship. In Hinayana, you would see stupas, pillars, etc. becoming the objects of worship only in a symbolic form, not literally. They are symbolic reminders of what Buddha stood for. After that, in the Mahayana, this anthropomorphic form literally became an object of worship, that if you pray to this idol, you will attain moksha. That's the kind of path eventually this Mahayana took. Of course, even they, in their purest form, did not advocate idol worship per se. They were also following symbolism, but eventually it deteriorated in a way that people just worshipped idols without following the guidelines that Buddha stood for. This led to a decay in Buddhist thought, and it was later replaced by Vedantic thought, Adi Shankaracharya, Bhakti movement, so on and so forth, which revived the Brahmanical traditions and later gave room for other religions like Islam, Christianity in India. Clear? Fine. Now, in this topic of Mahayana, what are you trying to understand? The input is suffering. Process is you are trying to do good deeds through the eightfold path. You are accumulating punya or merit, and you are worshipping Buddha as a cosmic principle like God, and output is you will attain nirvana or liberation. Here one more concept is there, the concept of bodhisattva. Okay, so bodhisattva is a sort of a person who himself got that liberation, but is waiting so that others can get guidance. Get guidance, and they will also cross that path. More like the UPSC mentors. But I am not a bodhisattva, I did not attain the liberation yet. So, what I am trying to say is that difference you see in the conception of Arhat and Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is a person who already attained but is staying back so that he can send more people to moksha. Sounds good, right? Sounds like a very noble thought. Then why did this institution of Bodhisattva eventually decay? Because it was abused. The monks, nuns, and the institutions which were safeguarding this whole Buddhist theology or the entire religious aspects of Buddhism, these people eventually got corrupted. The patrons corrupted this system in a pursuit of power, and therefore the decline of Buddhism happened. Clear? So, what is the lesson that you can learn from this? The concept of dharma. Initially, when the original intent of dharma was sidelined, it was replaced by Buddhism, which was relevant. That over a period of time got decayed, and this gave room for revival of the Brahmanical tradition in its truest form. Then again you will see a sort of a rigidity in the form of caste system, etc., which led to a bhakti movement, democratization effort. Then you have socio-religious reforms. Then you have law. So if you look at what never changed across history in philosophy, it is the concept of dharma, pursuit of dharma, dharma samsthapanarthaya, as it is given in Gita. Whenever there is adharma, some way or the other, that disorder will vanish, a new order will come into the picture and take its place. And I think you can relate this concept even to the political philosophies. Communism was an answer to the exploitation of imperialism. It was the right thing in that time period because it appealed to the masses. It acts like a check on the exploitation of imperialists. But just like every great idea, eventually it became irrelevant because it did not adapt. So the ideas keep on shuffling, but what underlies them, the concept of dharma, is eternal. As you sow, so you reap. Clear? So, what is the right thing? Always, that is stability. How will you attain that right thing? When you follow the principle of dharma. do one's duty as you are supposed to, the institutions will not decay and you will be relevant, you will adapt and grow over a period of time. This is the ethical aspect of the philosophical tradition of Indian philosophy. This is the story that every philosophical system will tell us. So, Buddhism, Jainism, Hinayana, Mahayana. Within Hinayana, Mahayana, you have two more subschools here also. Similarly, even in Jaina school, you will have subschools. Now, the subschool out of all the things that you need to know is Sunyavada. I will slightly move away from this concept of Buddhism and I'll teach you Vedantic thought when I have to explain this Sunyavada. But before that, I'll take a step back. Let's see if we can solve some previous year questions. Now, here I want to teach some more facets of Buddha's life through this previous year question. Take a look at this. Shakyamuni, Tathagat and Nayaputta. What is the answer for this question? Everybody knows 2 and 3, but why? Why not 1? It's a fact, right? But if you don't know the fact, how will you achieve it? Etymology. Looking at the word's origin can give you clues sometimes. You will be reading history of Buddhism. You will read that Buddha's original name was Gautam Siddharth. He was from the Shakya clan of the Mahajanpada period, a group of republics or oligarchy. Mother name, father name, son's name, chariot name, etc. You will by heart that list. Each of those names will kind of give you a clue. When you achieve that nirvana in one of the NCRTs or some traditional textbook, you have this word called Tathagat. When you achieve that status, you're called Tathagata. Tathagata himself was advocating something, there is a box. So you need to know your NCRTs pretty well. Your previous year questions pretty well. So if you know that 2 and 3 are right, none of the above is wrong. 1 only is wrong. It can either be 1, 2, 3 or 1 and 3. I gave you one rule, if you remember, in history, polity and other static textbooks. UPSC has a tendency to move towards minimization, eliminate as many options as possible. Okay? You know these two facts, you don't know the first fact. So, if you have to take a guess, again, this might feel like an illogical attempt, but you read all the traditional textbooks. You did all the previous year questions, and yet you never came across this word. Now what? You are stuck. Therefore, in those situations, assume that UPSC is testing your PYQ knowledge and traditional knowledge. Use this minimization rule and go for the 2 and 3. If you get it wrong, trust me, others will also get it wrong. But a prerequisite to achieve this is you have done all the previous year questions with options, with the background knowledge, studied all the traditional NCRT textbooks. That's it. Clear? Now, take a look at this. Souls are not only the property of animal and plant life, but also of rocks, running water, etc. What is the answer? Why? Doctrine of manyness of soul. We spoke about every entity has soul. How will you solve this question? What is the answer, everybody? See, if you attended this exam, you will know this. Do you find this text in any normal textbooks? So let's try to understand it through etymology. What language did Buddhism follow? See, this is a question which you are supposed to leave like Rahul Dravid. UPSC might run like Shoaib Akhtar, but you should know when to leave some questions. Okay, do not touch them. You are attempting this now because you are in this class, and I will give you all this gyan. But in the exam hall, the minute I see this question, I'll be like, I'll flip immediately. You will attempt this question only in the last moment. Let's be very real. I'm not going to sound like a Gyani asking you to by heart this list. It's not possible. But nevertheless, if you for some reason arrive at a point where you are forced to attempt these questions because the situations, like static textbook, like static polity, you know the right answer, but while bubbling, you made it a mistake. You know that question is gone. That regret itself will be killing you, and in that moment, you will be forced to overcome that situation and take a realistic guess. Otherwise, you are minimizing your chance. If you are going down, you will go down with 1 mark. Otherwise, you will be net positive. That risk-taking ability should always be there. In that kind of a scenario, and you have exhausted every question, how will you attempt then? In that kind of a scenario only, you will be attempting these questions. See this. If you take a look at the suffix pakarana, this is the meaning for treatise. See, I can now use Google and put it here and sound all very knowledgeable, but in the exam hall, it's impossible to come up with all this. So, do you really think I can come up with this in the exam hall? No. Let's see, we'll move to the next thing. Parvan frequently denotes an appendix. Again, impossible. Not possible. Avadana Ashtaka. Avadana is something that is related to Buddhist literature. Did you hear this word somewhere? Usually, in this, mock test, etc., somehow this is a frequently used question. I don't know the source, but a lot of candidates knew this question. I personally did not find this in any traditional NCRTs, SCRTs, but somebody found it. So it's like that Slumdog Millionaire story. Even if you get this right, the other 3, nobody knows. Okay, this is the only option? Okay. So, okay, maybe. This is like that Slumdog Millionaire kind of movement. Now, we are in 2025. We are learning the previous year questions. What do we do now with this question? Not only are you memorizing these options, you're also trying to break down the etymology and trying to understand the context of that topic. So that is what I aim to do, because UPSC has a tendency to repeat these questions. So when the word suffix pakarana is there and the spelling nethi is there, it's like if I dig the etymology of it, Pali has multiple references of this nethi. So Buddhism used Pali a lot. So you will associate that nethi and Buddhism for that reason. So it is one way in which you can memorize this fact in the case that UPSC asks this question again. Similarly, the word Parvan is indicating something. It's like an appendix. The next time you see this word Parvan, you have to think of an appendix and where you will find this appendices. Take a look at the words association and take a logical guess. Practically speaking, this is the extent to which every topper or anyone who entered into that list will prepare. What others who do not clear this exam will do? They will make a list of all the words that end with Parvan. They will make a list of all the words that end with Pakarana and try to memorize that list. They'll anyway forget it. They'll panic and mess up even if the same question is asked again. Don't do that. You should know where to stop. That is the objective of giving you this specific idea. You will have random questions like this. So these are the questions which you are supposed to leave. In your strategy, there are questions, like I told you, out of some X number of questions, 30% easy, 30% difficult, 30% moderate. Logically, I'm distributing equally amongst all of. Ignore the 30% difficult. Focus on getting 100% accuracy in the easy 30% question. 50% accuracy in the moderate questions. You will clear prelims. How not to clear prelims is you wasting your time on questions like this. Clear? You have to get the concepts right. Whatever we discussed in the first half. Now, take a look at this. Again, you can, if you read your traditional textbooks, that Tamil Nadu or NCRTs, you can still solve this question through elimination. Take a look at this. With reference to the cultural history, what is paramitas? Earliest Dharma Shastra texts, if you by heart the Smriti and Shruti literature, you will see that it is not the case. Philosophical schools that did not accept the authority of Vedas, what are they called? Nastika. Is this the word? No. Perfections whose attainment led to the Bodhisattva path, powerful merchant guilds of early medieval South India. If you read the Tamil Nadu SCRT textbook or NCRT textbook, the word for this is Shreni. The word for this is Nastika. There is a word for this, but definitely it is not Paramita. What is left? Bodhisattva path. Para, for others. Even through etymology, you can confirm that. So, you're not supposed to by heart everything. UPSC will design questions in such a way that it respects what you already know. So, they are indirectly checking your ability to recall these specific words. They are not asking you to identify. That is why UPSC is not a test of selection, it is a test of elimination. And you should not have illogical tricks. Patterns are fine, but you will use those patterns and tricks only when your existing knowledge is gone. Your existing logic is exhausted. It's a measure of last resort only. My reading is that in the years before, people could have gotten away with this kind of techniques. Now, if you do not have that accuracy, that exact knowledge, if you can't logically learn and apply the knowledge in these questions, it is difficult to clear this exam. Take a look at this. Sthaviravadins, Mahayana. Lokattaravadin, Mahasangika sect of Buddhism. The deification of Buddha by Mahasangikas fostered Mahayana Buddhism. So, do you think the third part is right? What is the answer for this question? Why is the first one wrong? Take a look at this. Sthaviravadins are the exact opposite of Mahayana. They belong to Hinayana. Then Mahayana is from the, so Mahasangikas are from the Mahayana sect. Then you will see this diagram. I forgot the diagram. So, yeah. So, if you take a look at this, it began here, Theravada or Hinayana. This is the variation of Hinayana, where originally some forms of the Hinayana were revived and transformed. So, it all started with the Hinayana school. Then there was a schism because of the perception. Then Mahayana school came into existence. Then you will have further divisions within the Mahayana school. And finally, you will see the logical conclusion in the Theravada or the Tantric Buddhism school, which became more prominent in Southeast Asia. Here, you will also see the concept of Padmapani. So you have this movie called Seventh Sense, if you remember. In that, you will see the concept of Rinpoche. You also have this Havel's ad where there are a lot of kids who, I don't know if you know it, Rinpoche. They'll be bowing to their spiritual leader, Rinpoche. So that concept of Rinpoche and Bodhisattvas trying to adapt this tantric cult is a concept that belonged to Theravada Buddhism. So I will stop here because it will become an overload of information. We will go back to Vedantic school of thought tomorrow and we will solve the remaining, not just Vedantic school, we'll talk about the remaining schools of thought in Orthodox sect. Okay, that's it from my end today. We'll see in the tomorrow's class again.